This isn't gonna work well.
It's fun.
Hey, welcome to It's My Railroad. Today, what I'd like to do is give you kind of a tour of everything that's going on in here and give you a little behind the scenes of some of the work that I've been doing. Now, if you've been with us for a while, you saw me build out this hobby room, you saw me lay all this bench work, and we've been kind of moving forward since then. But we've gotten a lot of new subscribers since that day when I first moved in here, December 8th of 2018. So what we're gonna do today is I'm just gonna grab that camera and sort of give you a tour of the entire hobby room, kind of a behind the scenes, and I'm gonna do this really informally. I don't have my studio lighting set up and I didn't clean anything up. It's just kind of the regular guy's hobby room. And when I'm done with that little tour, I'm gonna take you sort of behind the layout as best I can and show you the track I've laid and give you a sort of a description of the operations that we're gonna be having here on the Brownsmith Railroad. And I'll actually include running a train on this thing because I'm pretty proud of how this track turned out. So again, I'm gonna grab that camera right now and we're gonna start back here where I come into the hobby room, and I'm just gonna show you the naked underbelly of the hobby room for It's My Railroad. All right, let's start with the entire experience. In the background, you can hear Cindy Brown, the First Lady of Model Railroading, shooting some video upstairs in the studio. That's actually my laundry room. And so we're gonna walk past listening to me doing some laundry right now and out into the hobby room. And that was the door closing behind me. I'll just show you a shot of that. There's the door where I come in. That is right there. That is the controls for both garage door openers. One of them is actually on the back of the layout, and I have an interlock there to keep that from accidentally being opened for reasons I'll show you in a little bit. But as we move around, I built this shelf up here first to store a bunch of junk on. And then down here below, this is the actual top deck of the Brownsmith Railroad. Now, I'll get to that in a minute, but it's gonna be quite a while before we build this thing out to go all the way out and around to here. Coming back over here for just a second, this is where I keep my toolbox. Sometimes I actually move it around the corner there when I need to get to this part of the layout. But this part of the bench work is gonna end up getting some mainline track laid on it all the way down to back there, which I'll take you to in just a minute. That's so I can run the trains continuously, and there's a reason for that. Again, we'll go over in just a minute. But right now you see I've just got stuff stored everywhere right here. There's the garage door, there's my water heater, there's our freezer back there. That's awesome. And moving further along, I've gotten the LED lighting up to this point to light up the bottom deck, and I'm going to extend it over further when I put this track in right here. And moving over here further, well, look, this is where I'm keeping all of the locomotives and rolling stock and structures. It's a big mess, and I haven't taken really good care of any of this stuff to my shame, but there you go. Right inside this box right here, I have my two finished AT-M6s ready for their diorama, and this right here is the engine loco facility that I repurposed for the MRVP State Line Kit Bash Challenge. So I got all that kind of floating up here. This thing is, it's movable. I can move it around on top if I want to. Scrolling along here again on the bottom, that is the new port that we're building for Port Smith. And I can't show you too much of that because you need to watch MRVP to see that. Right here is where the trains come from the back of the layout, make their way across the back of the port. We'll travel all the way down this length, all the way down there, and turn around, basically come back. Right in this area right here, we're gonna have a yard for Port Smith, including a rival departure track, some other cool things. And scanning back over here, for those of you who don't know, this is Switch Junction right here. Switch Junction delivers grain from that facility right there, and they get some wool and cotton get loaded on over here, and then down here, of course, is where the fruit gets loaded from Fertile Valley that we're on our way to seeing right now. Moving forward, you can see back up in here, I've got the main line going to behind the layout, which you get to see in just a minute. Scrolling further along, that is the coal mine that I built, that actually this top right here comes off so I can get to the track underneath. Some kind of way we're going to integrate that into the main line back there. This is the gorge, the Virgin River Gorge that I built. And I scratch built that bridge, and I scratch built that bridge. I call that one the Hillbilly Bridge because it was built by a bunch of drunken hillbillies, and if I ever pull it off the layout and show it to you, you'll see why I'm saying that. It's kind of squirrely. Moving along here, this is the logging camp module, and for those of you who remember our very first season of It's My Railroad, I redid this entire logging camp, and you can see some of the details that we put in there that I'm pretty proud of moving along. It really looks awesome. It's a little squirrely right now because I haven't reset the structures in a little while. But that's that. Then scrolling further back, we still have the main line back there. It's a single line main right there until we get up to this switch motor right here that I installed. And actually it's wired. I can actually control it now, but it turns into a double line main right there. And then for those of you who've been watching our show for a while, you see that that is ultimately going to be Fertile Valley. And then on the top deck portion, look, I'm storing paints and a hot glue gun and some other junk. I'm gonna have the main line end up coming from that deal over there, coming along through here, and ultimately turning around right there and going back. This area of the layout here is Caliente Flats, and that's where we're gonna pick up all of our concrete and stuff we take to the port to deliver. So that is kind of the 360 of how this place looks. Now what I'd like to do is sort of describe for you how the track works on the layout. So anyway, that's kind of the general tour of the hobby room, and it's very exciting stuff in here. As you can see, not necessarily neat and tidy, not necessarily organized, but I managed to have a pretty good time out here. So I think what I'd like to try to get done now is we're gonna start back here where ultimately the trains would be leaving the bottom deck on their way to the top deck. And that's quite a bit of a journey. And the way this is set up right now, the trains spend more time behind the layout than in front of the layout, but that's ultimately gonna be corrected once I get the rest of the track up here. So again, gonna grab the camera, gonna start setting it up and working our way around the layout all the way up to and including getting right up here where it's gonna pop onto the second deck and head into Caliente Flats. So to get started, this is where the trains leave the bottom deck on their way up to the top deck. And you can see I've got a stack train sitting there. There's no containers on it because I haven't finished that portion of it, and they just sort of fall off here and there because of the vibration. So rather than dealing with that right now, I've just got some empty ones, and on the other side of that, I got a 6-axle diesel locomotive provided to me by my buddy Will Kling that's gonna pull that uphill. So what we're gonna do right now is open up the garage door, take you to the back side, and we can start working our way up to the top deck. As you can see, I've got a shelf built up there right up against the garage door opener, and when the garage door opens, it can hit some of that stuff and knock it off onto the hobby room floor. So what I did to make sure nobody accidentally opens that garage is I put in this switch bank right here, and this switch right here actually turns on the garage door opener. That's pretty cool. By the way, while we're here, this one turns on my DCC, this one turns on the deck lighting, and that one turns on just permanent DC power to light up the structures and stuff. But once I've flipped that switch right there, we just sort of pan over, and this garage door button is ready to go. Push it, and panning back over, we see the garage door coming up. Oops, and knocking the cork road bed off. I could have sworn I had that set down further, but apparently I didn't. Welcome to the regular guy world. Now let me take you to the back side and show you what the train looks like coming through there. So it's pretty bright out here today, but that gives you a sort of an overview of how this looks from the outside with the garage door open. Moving in a little further, however, I'm holding this camera by hand, so it's gonna be a little shaky, but there's the locomotive connected to the train I showed you a second ago, and we'll just go ahead and start moving him forward. runs along this double line main we've got going back here. Now, I stopped the train for a second so I could bring you inside and show you what it looks like from inside the garage. And by the way, there's the garage hanging out with us live on the broadcast. So as I move forward, I work my way through all of this stuff right here to show you this. Let's bring that train forward again. There it is. And we'll stop it right here. I think we should adjust the lighting a little bit, don't you? There we go. Right here I've got a crossover actually. It's controlled by 2 cobalt switch motors, and that is to enable the train coming up from Switch Junction to eventually cross over to the correct side of the track. We run right-handed traffic here, and it'll be on the left side when it comes up, and that's no bueno. So anyway, moving forward, again, see, there we go. I got this column right here and a rack, and then that's sort of the way it looks going up. Let me stop the train for just a second and we'll just work our way around. And there's our little train again on his way up. See how it's kind of dark back there? It is what it is. And moving along, goes through the tunnel portal. Coming around to the other side of the layout. See it coming through our concrete tunnel portal and working its way up the grade. And then we head back out to the back of the layout. Now here we are back outside, back on the back of the layout, but now we're on the second level. See the train traveling through here. And then let's stop the train for a second. Right here, I've got this tortoise switch motor that will allow this train actually to keep going the direction it's coming, but downhill trains will wait on this track right here for the single line main to clear. Once it does, the computer software that we're going to be including on this layout will switch that turnout right there and then let the train head back down on the single track main. I've got a single track main coming up and around here because that turn you're looking at right now is way too tight to have a double track main. So that's the solution I came up with. But back through here, I'm gonna have what people would call staging tracks, but I'm just gonna call them storage tracks, making their way all the way around here. And this is where I'm going to keep some of the longer trains that I'm just going to have running in continuous operations. They're not actually going to be used on the layout except for through freight. But let's get our locomotive going again here. And you can see he's pulling steadily up this grade. This is pretty awesome. Well, actually, I'm going to show you a problem I had with the grade here in just a second. But again, working its way back through and around. And that is just about as far as we are able to go. So that's the run coming up through the back of the layout. Now, something I need to show you here real quick is these supports you see right here When I first was experimenting with getting that train up here, I really had a problem with this support, that one, and the one way in the back. The grade was way too steep and the thing really struggled getting up here. So what I did is I just sort of unscrewed it, lifted it up, balanced it out to the point where now, as you saw, it just pulls nice and smooth right up to the layout and eventually pops through that hole onto the top deck and into Cal Indy Flats. So as I showed you before, this is switch junction we're looking at here. And I've got an outbound train coming out of the yard. Now this is only set up to carry 6 cars plus the 2 switchers out. So that's all you're ever gonna get out of here. But let me show you some interesting features we've got coming up here. First, let's just pull the train out. And I'm not doing this at scale speeds. We're just gonna run this train for right now. Across the Pistachery Bridge, through this tunnel that we're gonna end up putting a fascia over. And then coming up through the canyon. Working its way up to Fertile Valley. Now in normal operations, right about here, I'll leave the train right there and then I'll be able to push a button basically that tells the software to run that train all the way around the back of the layout and over and leave it at the arrival departure track at Port Smith, because that's the only route this train takes. But we can't do that right now because I don't have the software installed. So moving forward, the train comes up past Fertile Valley, pulling 6 cars up a 5% grade and enters into the tunnel portal. Now if I run back to the back here real quick, as the train comes through the tunnel portal to the back of the layout, if for some reason there is another train on the rails ahead of it, the computer software will stop it. You can see I've got our container train sitting right there. And what we'll end up doing is once the container train comes through and clears that turnout, I got it going pretty fast here right now. Then the software switches the turnout and we're able to keep moving towards Port Smith. But as you can see, the locomotive's on the wrong track. We're going to remedy that downstream. So here we are back at the crossover I showed you earlier. When that turnout down there is thrown, the crossover is also thrown. And the interesting thing is, these Cobalt switch motors, you can set the IP addresses on them separately. I've got them both set to the same IP address. So I enter one command for one turnout and they both get thrown. It's pretty awesome. So then we'll go ahead and bring our train back down. The train crosses over to the other side. So now it's on right-hand traffic like it's supposed to be. All of the trains are waiting for this to happen that are in this block. And it just continues on down to Port Smith. Okay, so there you go. That's the basic operation of the layout, the way it sits right now. That's the way the hobby room looks. That's the way the garage looks. Just kind of a regular guy kind of thing. Now, you heard me talking about computer software I'm going to be using. And I've selected Train Controller as the software to control the trains. I've spent a great deal of time in their simulator figuring out how to do the blocking and things. Matter of fact, the way this layout is set up, I pretty much did it based on my research in their simulator. And here's where I'm at as a model railroader. I love building the models, but I love watching the trains run through those models. And so the bottom deck here is mostly set up for just running the train. not a whole lot of operations. We've got the port operations and switch junction operations. Some up here in the logging camp and the coal mine behind me. Little bit on the top deck will be much more intense when it comes to switching if we ever get to the top deck. But what I'd like to be able to do is launch a train by the push of a button from one location to the other, but have multiple trains running at one time. Using that software, a train will wait for a train to go by, another train will get going, things of that nature. But at various points on the layout, the software will land the train, it'll stop, I'll pick up my throttle and I'll take it from there, do a bunch of switching ops, put the train back on that track, and then tell the software, send it to its next location, and it'll go that way. I'm gonna be running some trains on here that are 6 physical feet long or longer, long stack trains, long grain and tanker car trains that won't fit on any of the sidings or in any of the industries, but their intention is to have a lot of through traffic running around here. As you probably noticed, it takes a while for the trains to get up through the back of the layout. That kind of sucks because right now, the shortest distance is what I can see. The longest distance is behind the layout, but that's gonna change. So anyway, that is the good, the bad, and the ugly of what happens in the hobby room for the regular guy. And I thank you for going along this journey with me. And we've got more stuff coming up here. We've got the concrete tunnel portal that I built coming up in the next few weeks. So I really appreciate you being here with me. And until next time, my name is Steve Brown. Rail on, my friends.